Okay, cool. Okay. Observation 1 is a resolution: the United States federal government should nationalize energy production in the United States as a base to be evaluated through net benefits. Observation 2 is inherent to the nuclear power being expanded worldwide. And delays, unlike the United States, were active construction of new reactors stopped in the mid-90s. The U.S. of the world has continued to build these nuclear reactors. The 2, the regulatory risk and high capital costs of the barrier to this happening within the status quo. The next argument is that the third inherency argument. The U.S. has more private-owned than any other country. The U.S. has more private-owned nuclear power plants than any other country. Additionally, there's over 100 commercial reactors in the United States. Thus, the plan: the United States federal government should nationalize nuclear energy production in the United States. The United States federal government should nationalize nuclear energy production in the United States.
Thank you.
Solvency. One is that light water reactors are ideal and will be exclusively produced in the world with the United States federal government nationalize nuclear energy production. It removes the barriers with investment and capital costs. The 2, the light water reactors can solve as breeder reactors, allowing waste processing and promoting solving environmental problems. The next argument: the improvements can be made quickly, allowing light water reactors to be efficiently nationalized. The third argument is light water reactors are used for years and are the type of nuclear technology deemed the most robust and successful. The fourth argument is light water reactors are resistant to proliferation and attack. They can't actually handle the raws without any kind of fatal consequence. Additionally, that there's 450 people out of the world, and none of these have actually been attacked by terrorists. An indication this wouldn't actually happen. The advantage 1, health and the environment. Shoot.
What kind of elements are utilized in light water reactors? Is it uranium-235, 238?
My understanding is that it's more plutonium. There's some part of plutonium that's split as a process of that.
Okay, thanks.
Advantage 1. Some ways uniqueness: one, the growth in electricity demand is inevitably the only way to max demand is to construct additional coal-fired plants or build these nuclear reactors. The 2 is if we continue to build coal, it will have 25% increase in U.S. emissions in the near future. The latest is 50% new 150 new coal-fired plants that are generating plants that people are actually talking about creating the status quo. Only 50% of these completely will increase exhaust gas emissions by 120,000 cubic feet per minute. The little bit that we rely on coal in the action will push away average global temperatures above the 6 degrees Celsius threshold. Means it will always lead to inevitable global warming. The link 1 is the plan covers regulation and investment burdens, which means that there will be increased investment within nuclear reactor power plants. That will be a direct trade-off with these new coal plants that are being developed internally. Once the nuclear power is key to prevent coal-based air pollution. Little delays, the coal contain 10,000 tons of sulfur dioxide, which always inevitably leads to acid rain and destroying the forests and buildings, etc. Little b is the coal is the leading cause of smog, global warming, and air toxins. The 2 is the mining destroys the land and pollutes marine environments. Little a is that the mountaintop removal uniquely affects the areas to the point that these chemicals always leach down to the ground, affecting the natural areas around it. The next argument is that the waste always disposed in valleys and streams. An example of this: in West Virginia, 300,000 acres of forest and 1,000 miles of streams were affected by the waste that was put into valleys and streams. The third argument is that coal plants emit radiation. They increase more they have more radiation increase than nuclear power by a large margin. Additionally, fly ash, which is a byproduct of coal mining, is 100 times more radiation than any kind of nuclear waste. The impact 1 is health and lives. The long-term implications of this of heavy metal lead to lung disease and immediate deaths and dehumanization. At the point that this uniquely affects people who live in low-income areas. This environmental racism. That's unique argument is those people are uniquely affected by increasing radiation and increasing ash release into the sky. The second impact is environmental global climate change. We say that to the point that you're raising water temperature, the air temperatures above the global climate change level of 6 degrees Celsius. We see this leads to runaway global warming at the point that it melts. The ice caps going into the water, which inherently increases ocean acidification, which then destroys the coral reefs within them, which inevitably leads to the collapse of literally millions of species. In addition, also raising water temperatures. We say that this always eliminates phytoplankton, decreasing the oxygen that actually exists in the atmosphere, leading to the extinction of all humans in addition to other species. The third impact is that you should always prioritize this impact. The fact that you should evaluate biodiversity class with the precautionary principle, where if there's just literally one wrong on a ladder, that always has the implication to affect the entire world. The advantage 2 is nuclear leadership. Subpoint A's uniqueness. The first argument is that internationally nuclear technology is inevitable. U.S. competitiveness will be impaired if American companies cannot actually develop this nuclear power. The delays in China and India and France are always moving towards this technology. The 2 is the U.S. fails to become a nuclear energy provider, will lose their political and technological competitiveness to address the proliferation concerns. Little a is 104 of the world's 450 power reactors are within the United States. The third argument is that absent the American alternative, the international community will adopt the French Purex technology, which greatly facilitates proliferation and harms the environment. Little a is that it leads to radioactive gases that go into the air that flashes into nearby waterways. The next argument is the Department of Energy deactivated its U.S. Purex plants in 1992 and 1995 after discovering to release radioactive gases into the air because the French Purex system uniquely separates the plutonium, which uniquely affects the environment more than any other kind of nuclear or light water reactor kind of technology. The link 1 is the plan reinvigorates the U.S. investment in civilian nuclear energy by facilitating the construction and development of nuclear power plants by really eliminating these kinds of investment barriers. We talk about the inherency level. The internal link 1 is the U.S. leadership on nuclear technology is necessary to prevent proliferation. Pro-technologies from being employed internationally, and designs will be modeled after the United States. If we create an alternative to the French Purex system that is likely to be modeled internationally, just like the rest of our technology and the rest of our energy fields have been modeled by the rest of the international community. second argument is that support for nuclear power is going to shape the international non-proliferation norms. We are facilitating a kind of development technology that is prone to not actually being attacked by any kind of terrorism and creating it as an alternative to nuclear proliferation. That's always going to be perceived internationally. Third argument is that continuing constructing and developing power plant sector is always going to provide a direct economic stimulus. The fact that they will always increase the alternative energies that we have access to, at the point that we are hitting peak electricity and we don't have any kind of alternative to actually get access to that. That's always going to stimulate. Additionally, the fact that U.S. energy is modeled internationally, it's always going to be a direct economic stimulus for the United States. The impact was proliferation. We see this is always going to lead to inevitable proliferation without other countries if we don't have any control over the kind of nuclear development technology that's going on in the status quo. Additionally, the second argument is crossed by the global climate change arguments that I made earlier about creating this kind of nuclear leadership and other people making this transition. In addition, the third argument is it's going to lead to an economic collapse. The United States does not have control over the investment that's going into the United States. We say this is inevitably going to lead to resource wars where it's try or die, and people just trying to get enough food to feed their children. We say this inevitably goes nuclear at the point that people try and get access to nuclear weapons because it is a resource war, and to try or die, we say this inevitably escalates into nuclear extinction, creating a dust cloud that blocks out the sun, leading to global extinction.
All right. Let's see. 1, 2 off, and then lots of case.
Okay. And case in the same order?
Yeah.
Okay.
Either one a criticism or multiple pages.
No.
Cool.
Actually, you know what? I'm going to be a little weird. I'm going to go advantage 1, advantage 2, and then solve it.
Okay. Cool, totally fine. Thanks.
There's also that thing. It seems to be like it was made for you.
Whatever that means.
It's this size.
I can't remember the table my back was, so it's the end of 10 months.
I would be able to hear yourself.
I'm fine.
It's way too short to me.
That's all right.
I can see yourself sitting.
Anyone have The first occupant position is that of topicality. The A supports the interpretation nationalize energy production means all energy production as a term of art. Nationalize energy production means all energy production as a term of art. The B support is a violation. They only do nuclear energy. The C support stands one predictable ground. There are dozens of types of individual energy types only. All allows access to predictable negative arguments. When they are able to just select one, then they are able to delink a lot of the negative offense. The second argument is limits that the overinterpretation allows for a reasonably limited debate. The third argument is that of a term of art that nationalize energy production refers to all energy production. We could have just said nuclear energy if that was all that we meant. The C support of the standards, or the D support of the voters. The first argument is that of competitive equity, that when I don't get access to the offense that I prepared, then I'm losing out on competitive equity in the round, which is the internal link to education. When I don't get access to be a fair competition in the round, then I am less likely to compete in debate, means that I am less likely to learn from the unique form of debate. The third argument is competing interpretations, that you should evaluate this through competing interpretations. Whoever wins the standard debate wins the debate. Did you want something else, Corey?
Yeah, you're good.
Disadd. Business confidence. They support these needs as the first argument. The business confidence increased to 53.2% in February from 51.3% in January. Business confidence by this is indexed by the Institute for Supply Management. The second argument is that hiring has increased as well. That they gained 175,000 jobs, where 129,000 were gained in January. The third is that the manufacturing index in February showed 57.1%, which is the highest since May of 2010. The fourth is the manufacturing is expanding right now. The little a is the production manufacturing index is at 53.2%, which is an increase of 1.9% over January. The little b is that of 18 manufacturing industries, 14 reported growth in February. The B support is the link that they nationalize energy production, which scares businesses off of developing their businesses because they're afraid that the federal government is going to have the precedent to just come in and take over their business as well. And the second link is that at the point at which a massive industry is taken over by the federal government, then this industry is no longer going to be able to spend in the economy to create benefits. Yes, Corey?
This also reverses the Supreme Court decision in Youngstown Sheet 2 Company.
That's right. The third argument is that this also reverses the Supreme Court decision in Youngstown v. whoever Corey's talking about. I'm sure he's going to extend that for me. The C support of the internal links. The first argument is that business confidence fall leads to a collapse of the economy, which is going to hurt the economy. The little a is that business hiring is it has an effect on unemployment. You can look at the 2008 wage lasted so long because businesses were not hiring. The little b is that this just fuels consumer confidence. A decrease in business confidence leads to an increase in consumer prices to maintain profit over the long run and causes consumers to buy less, which leads to a vicious cycle of feedback. The D support of the impacts. The first argument is the resource wars that aggressive grabs guarantee access to. Countries participate in aggressive grabs towards resources in order to be able to guarantee their access to resources into the future. For instance, if the federal government is going to be running the nuclear program, then they're going to very aggressively pursue uranium so that they have control over this into the future. Is the bring forward the nuclear war scenario, because when competing countries are competing for access to these resources, they're likely to begin a try or die scenario where they're willing to miscount and fire missiles. The second argument is that of poverty. The ace point is that poverty is dehumanizing because it leads to choices between things like, well, am I going to buy food this week, or am I going to pay rent so that I have a place to live, which becomes creates a subset of the population that is the socioeconomically disadvantaged, who are cyclically put down there. The little b is that this is the justification of genocide because the poor are dying and we do little to stop it right now, and the little c is that this leads to starvation and death, whether when individuals don't actually have the ability to buy food, that means that they die. On to advantage one. The first argument against advantage one is going to be at the link level. That is term that nuclear waste is actually disproportionately placed in regions that the socioeconomically disadvantaged live. So this means that they're actually going to be harming the health of the poorest individuals worse. You can look to the storage just north of Moab, that is along the Colorado River, that has historically leaked nuclear waste into Native American waterways. It means that these individuals are necessarily eating the toxins of the nuclear waste of the nuclear programs. It means that these individuals are never getting access to their health because the United States federal government doesn't actually care about the health of the poor, and they just put the nuclear waste in places that they can't actually guarantee that it won't get out. Yes, Corey?
Turn uranium mining leads to runoff that affects...
Turn uranium mining leads to runoff that necessarily affects the poorest people first, because the poorest people are the ones that live around the uranium mines, because rich people don't want to look at strip mines in their backyards. Means that these individuals are getting higher blood toxicity of uranium, means that these individuals have a higher probability of cancer, and these individuals are more likely to die. Do you want anything else, sir, Corey?
Global warming inevitable.
Oh, the next argument is that global warming is inevitable. We have already reached the point of no return. We're never going to be able to solve this. The impacts may not be here just yet, but there's the ICCC says that there's absolutely no way that we're ever going to be able to solve this. At this point, is the reason why you're never going to be evaluating any of their warming impacts above the structural impacts against the poor. Happy?
Yep. All
right, on to the second one, nuclear leadership. The first argument is not unique, that the United States has no nuclear leadership right now because other countries are using better technology based on thorium. They are much more likely to use thorium reactors that are molten salt reactors rather than light water reactors, and this would actually be going backwards for them because it's a better technology that is more efficient and cheaper to operate. Is the reason why the United States leadership is never going to come out of the plan. The next argument is that there is no link, that there's not going to be any modeling at the point at which the United States is going to go to them and say, hey, let's go backwards 3 generations of nuclear technology. They're going to tell the United States to bugger off because that's just moving their entire society backwards. The next argument is that they say that this is going to be able to stop proliferation, but the technology that they're using creates the plutonium that can be used in dirty bombs and that can be used to coat warheads. As a reason why this is actually just making the military-industrial complex stronger and is probably actually worse for the world. The next argument is at the impact level, where they say that they're going to be able to check proliferation. However, proliferation is inevitable right now. Countries want to get access to this as a strategic chess piece so that they can guarantee that no one's ever going to launch a nuclear attack against them, because all that you need is one nuke in order to guarantee that people aren't going to launch an attack against you. The next argument that they go for is... Sorry, what did you want, Corey?
You're good.
Okay, cool. I think I'm good here. You happy?
Yeah.
Cool. On to solvency.
First argument. Any nuclear is bad because it leads to countries like France dumping nuclear waste in Somalia.
Any nuclear is bad because it leads to countries like France dumping nuclear waste in Somalia. That all countries dispose of their nuclear waste irresponsibly. The light water reactors that they isolate, they claim, can be used as breeder reactors to break down some of this nuclear waste, but that's not actually true. The light water reactors are the technology that we have right now, and that is what is feeding the massive amounts of nuclear waste that we have. That is causing seepage because we don't have the ability to store this. There is no safe way to store nuclear waste because the nuclear waste is radioactive for longer than the lifespan of the human race, means that they're never going to be able to get access to this. The next argument is energy prices. There's quantitative evidence that suggests through a Granger causality analysis that that this leads to a substantial increase in prices when there are both high energy prices and nationalization. The little a is that... Yeah.
Can you repeat that argument?
Yeah, the Granger causality analysis says that when there is nationalization in a country that already has high energy prices, that it leads to an increase in prices. The little a is that the energy prices are going to increase. The little b is that the cost of living is going to increase as a result because individuals are going to need to pay to get access to the energy. The little c is that poverty rates are going to increase as the cost of living increases, means more individuals are going to be violently forced into the periphery. The little d is that they're going to have to choose between food, fuel, and shelter. The little e is that these choices are dehumanizing and creates a subset of the population. The little f is that these are disposable populations that the United States just treats as ones that we can get rid of. The next argument is going to be... Yeah, Corey?
They kill other renewable green tech, like solar.
kill other renewable green tech like solar, which is going to be better for us into the future because it doesn't create the nuclear waste, means that they're only going to be perpetuating the problem that we see right now because we have enough uranium to run the United States for 500 years, but that means that we are only going to continue to create these harms for the next 500 years, means that we're never going to get access to the green technology that is going to be critical to resolving the problems in the United States and guaranteeing that we don't actually pollute ourselves to death.
Same order. I can repeat that if you want. That would be the topicality argument on the top. The Viscon argument after that. Advantage 1. Advantage 2.
When did you start flowing solvency debate? I thought those arguments were on advantage too.
Okay, the only argument I have on solvency is that nationalization leads to an increase in prices.
Okay.
So that's what I mean by that. That's the argument that's on the bottom. It's literally the exact same order we went in.
Thank you. On topicality, the first argument is we need your interpretation is that nationalize means all we say that we need because we nationalize all nuclear energy. But the next argument is nationalize means to transfer from a major branch of industry or commerce from private to state ownership or control. Then counter-interpretation is nationalize means to transfer a major branch of industry or commerce from private to state ownership or control. That argument is we need our counter-interpretation because we change from private to state control. But now also the interpretation of energy power production is that things to produce power derived from utilization of physical or chemical resources. Energy production is things that produce power derived from the utilization of physical or chemical resources. We would always prefer, we meet this argument also, you would always prefer a definition because this is a dictionary definition which makes it the most accessible and predictable. This is the first argument that comes out, means it's the most likely argument that we come here to debate. The second argument is all types of energy are not equivalent. Look to the literature. All literature divides different types of energy, has different unique reason that we have different sectors. Look to the fact that the DOE itself classified nuclear power as a primary energy source. Even the Department of Energy doesn't think that all energy is the same. They think that nuclear power is the primary energy source, which means two things. First of all, the Department of Energy, the most likely person to define this, doesn't feel it all as one. But the second argument it means that it's super predictable because the Department of Energy actually defines nuclear power as the most predictable for this field. So your interpretation of energy would be bad because your interpretation of energy would literally include caloric energy, which would probably be pretty bad for you. You don't define all types of energy used to create power. You literally just say all types of energy means that this interpretation would always be bad for you. But we're specific as the resolution. We tell you that the resolution would always be the epicenter of predictability. But the next argument at once predictability. No talk about the entire. There's no talk about the entire sector in any of the literature because this would literally be political suicide for the United States. But also there's no resolutional basis. Nationalization of energy production would be political suicide. Also the literature basis. No one is actually writing about nationalizing all types of energy. Also the arguments normal means parametrics are open to the affirmative choice. That's from focus to topic specific application. We never learned about energy if we had to do all energy because all have different types of implementation. For the energy sector, we tell you that learning specifically about nuclear power is always going to be key. But also we would never have any solvency because we would have to solve literally all sectors. But also don't punish us for a bad resolution. Look to the fact that the resolution doesn't say all. If they wanted us to have this debate, it would say all means you never vote on topicality. But also there's they don't provide natural definition of the word. But we also tell you that if it had to be all, that would be worse for them because we literally go for one type of energy. They would have to read defense to literally every type of energy under their interpretation, which would be super bad for them. That tracks back all of their arguments. Don't let them go for any term of art arguments because they haven't properly defined it. We tell you that we limit the debate in a good way because it's best for education. Means there's no reason to go against us. We tell you evaluate this in the basis of reasonability, which means if we're winning one counter standard, that means we win the debate. Also potential abuse is not a voter. This is not a debate.
Real quick.
What's up, really fast?
Can I get a copy of your interpretation?
Sure.
Or can you repeat it for me?
You can just have them. They're the two ones up there. Cool. This is not a debate, or just rewrite them. Okay. First argument is the econ blue in the stats book. First argument is the investor confidence super low in the stats book structure that actually failed the biggest loss in months in the most recent week. The second argument is there's an unknown political environment, which means that no one's investing in the stats book because no one knows what Congress is going to do. People think that Congress are going to try to deal with this situation in Ukraine, which involves passing LNG piece of legislation, which means that no one's confident. Or arguments that financial companies like Bank of America and Citicorp actually decreased 3.1%. This led to a massive loss in the S&P 500 in the recent weeks. The fourth argument is business confidence. More than half of small business state the healthcare costs and taxes have killed their confidence, would mean they're not expanding in the stats. The next argument is the Census Bureau said the total number of new businesses and new business startups is decreasing in comparison to the business closure, which means business confidence actually doesn't exist in the stats. The seventh argument is retail sales and manufacturing sales actually decreased in the recent months, which is probably increased manufacturing is behind the stats. But also the next argument is the nuclear power industry is unsustainable in the stats. The first argument is it's massively unpopular because of things like Japan, which made nuclear power look super unsafe. Also, there's no mechanism for which known concerns have been resolved. That's the reason that nationalizing has the ability to do this because without nationalization, people always assume the worst because there's no ability to actually deal with these concerns. Always arguments the federal government actually gave a loan security of $5 billion to Georgia, which was the first time they've done this since '96, which is always the reason that this doesn't freak businesses out, because it actually looks like nationalization is coming in the status quo, and also it looks like the reason that this is coming, people want to make nuclear power more sustainable, so people are prepared for this, but also made commitment to transfer toward renewable energy. And he said that he would do this in any national means, which is always the reason that this doesn't perpetually freak out business. This is also looked to all of the arguments on the affirmative, which are reasons that we have a bunch of nuclear power in the status quo. The next argument is true that we actually extend the advantage to arguments that we make that actually make this affordable, which makes it actually good for businesses to transition to nuclear power. But the next argument is true, we're actually good for the energy sector, makes energy actually super sustainable. But also look to the argument that all their links are talking about how we scare businesses, but uncertainty is at an all-time high, which answers all of these arguments. The fact that we have political uncertainty means that businesses aren't expanding in the status quo. You have no game on this. You say that no one's hiring. Our argument is no one's hiring in the status quo. The only reason unemployment numbers have gone down is because no one's hiring means you don't have the ability to solve this. Also look to the fact that we're the best internal link to solving any of these resource wars or economy arguments as per all of our advantage 2. Advantage 1 debate. You say you make your first argument is the waste is always displaced and socially disadvantaged areas. The first argument is nationalization actually solves this. The reason it's displaced in the status quo is because it's not nationalized. Private companies are allowed to do this and not be regulated by the federal government. Extend or solving the arguments that regulation actually has the ability to solve this. Make sure that private companies don't have the ability to get away with this. The second argument is that light water reactors actually have the ability to spend fuel and spend nuclear waste to actually fuel these nuclear power plants. It's really sick kind of technology. That's why light water reactors are so awesome, because they have the ability to use this waste over and over and over again until there's literally not toxic waste. That is an empirical solve to arguments for all the other types of uses. You say that this leads to uranium mining. Look to the fact that except the argument that nationalization solved, but to the other arguments, we already have enough uranium to power nuclear water reactors for something like 50 years in the status quo, maybe more than that. We already have a bunch of excess uranium, but we also have a bunch of nuclear waste that we can use to power these reactors. You say that we've already reached the point of no return to global warming. It's a matter of whether global warming happens fast or slow. We say if it happens really slow, good, which they have the ability to solve. It means people have the ability to move out of these areas where those sea levels would rise, which is really important. You in a world as we have, you make this happen really fast, which means the displaced populations don't have the ability to move, which means they die, but also the phytoplankton kill off rather than having the ability for technology to solve. We say the technology actually solves for this fast transition, but also extend our argument about species dying off. Advantage 2. You say that other countries have better reactors and thorium is cheaper. We said the light water reactors are the best technology in the status quo. That's for some of the arguments, but the only reason that they're cheaper is because the United States has to nationalize them in the status quo, which means in a world in which the United States nationalizes them, it means other countries actually adopt these kind of reactors, and these kind of reactors look really good, but also they're wrong on what kind of reactors. Everyone's using the PRX reactor, which France has. We're winning arguments about white kids are really bad, and people are already looking to transition away from them because they're getting a lot of flack from their government. They say that there's no modeling in the status. No, there would be no modeling in the status quo. People want water reactors. Also, they're looking to transition away from these bad types of nuclear reactors in the status quo. You say that plutonium is used to dirty mouth. Look to the fact that these are super secure. There have been no attacks on a light water reactor ever in history, but also you have the ability to recycle this nuclear waste. You say that proliferation is inevitable. We tell you the nuclear norms are always going to check, but also the fact that the United States has nuclear leadership is always going to be key to check. You literally don't have any way to proliferate and win a world which is nuclear energy secure. You say that any nuclear would bad because France is dumping these. Look to the fact that we lead to a transition away from these the reactors that France uses is because we can export our technology to them. Look to the fact that we solve this. Also, France uses these bad type of reactors. We're the only way to solve this. You say that there is technology now which would feed the waste storage. I already answered this argument about how you can just reuse the waste. You say nationalization leads to an increase in prices. The first argument is that there's no sustainability right now in the energy sector. That's all of our advantage 1 about how coal's not sustainable, which means that their prices are inevitably going to increase because coal isn't sustainable. But also the private is empirically more expensive because private companies have the ability to jack up their prices. Nationalization has the ability to solve this because the federal government is forced to do this nationally. Also, they say that this would kill other sectors like people aren't forced to choose. They're forced to provide nuclear power. They say this would kill other sectors. Look at the fact that there's movement in the status quo. Also, that light water reactors are empirically better than solar, but also there's not a movement towards solar in the status quo. They don't read any uniqueness arguments to this term. So we agree to transition to alternative and renewable energies, which is probably a reason that maybe solar increases.
Same order.
Same order?
Yeah.
Cool.
T based on global warming leadership.
Cool.
And I got a little mixed up on the flow where between like advantage 2 and solvency. I'll make sure it's not both.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
Is everybody ready? Everybody good?
Yes.
Cool. Extend the lead on top guy, rock this position, they don't put any offense on it, even if there were, they would say the top guys should check on piece of government TVs or social media, they never reject this leading. This one. They read a lot of economic work, but none of them really assume that actual business competency should stand across our specific arguments about why business competency increase in status quo, both because of specific indexes that are showing the increase, but additionally the actual increase in jobs overall. All of their argumentation are not only temporary, but also do not assume the actual business confidence means that all of your argumentation doesn't work. The first argument they make here is investor confidence is low because stocks are so the biggest loss in the wild. We say first this is only a temporary decrease means your argument doesn't work. The actual volatility of the stock market is actually decreased overall. You can look at the fact that the stock market has completely made up all of its losses since the 2008 recession. That stock market is actually increasing overall means that these arguments doesn't work. Additionally, the next argument make here is that investor confidence is low because Congress is not acting. We say first we say this is only a temporary situation. Necessarily means that all of your argumentations about why don't work. Additionally, second we say that Congress has been dysfunctional for so long. The businesses have already made and put that into the calculations that they are aware things aren't going to happen. Necessarily means that all means this argument doesn't work. Additionally, the next argument we make here is about Ukraine is hurting investor confidence. We say first we say this was resolved this morning. The Ukraine vote that led to that voted 95% in favor of separation. That was the word I'm looking for. Necessarily means that this was resolved. Additionally, second, say that businesses have already been functionally assumed this into the calculation. Necessarily means that this argument doesn't work. Additionally, the third argument here is to say the economy is only going to be a temporary issue. Necessarily means that the business confidence is still high overall. Necessarily means for the quarter we are still functional. The next argument we make here is about small business confidence being low because of the Affordable Care Act. We say first we say that your argument is just Republican propaganda. We say that all of the arguments about why small businesses being have been folding only have never been substantiated and had to actually function. Additionally, second to say that the overall your plan is still going to be destroying business confidence. Worse, even if there's a small decrease necessary because you're nationalizing entire industries, necessarily means that you're still going to be destroying business confidence overall.
Production manufacturing index answers that.
Additionally, the production manufacturing index and the answers that shows that the actual manufacturing across the economy has been increasing. Necessarily means that your small arguments about employers doesn't function. The next argument here is that new startups have been increasing. We say even if this is true, we say that first it's only a temporary decrease. But additionally, second to say that all of our arguments about how the actual increase in the economy overall necessarily subsume this. You can look to the production manufacturing index as an excellent example here. Necessarily means that this argument doesn't apply. The next argument we make here is about retail sales. We say that first, the retail sales were decreased over Christmas, but we say that's only a temporary harm. Additionally, second, we say that the actual manufacturing has still been increased, means that your argument here doesn't work. Additionally, third, we say that you should be referring our specific analysis about the actual business confidence that maybe only one sector. That's only one sector of the overall businesses. We say that you're going to be affecting overall. Necessarily means that this is not a good warrant. Next argument we make here is that nuclear power is unsustainable now because of Japan. We say that first we say that's not a good warrant. A good example here is that we say that even if nuclear power is unsustainable, we say that when you're nationalizing entire industries, that's still going to be being perceived negatively by businesses. Necessarily means that even if the system is bad, it's still going to be lead to freak out. We say that the Affordable Care Act is an excellent example here that when the Affordable Care Act supposedly nationalized the healthcare industry, a lot of businesses were freaking out and actually led to decrease that. We say that the plan is actual nationalization is going to lead to the worst harms. The next argument make here is that looks like it's coming down because of the Georgia loan security. We say that first that this argument doesn't apply because the fact that the government gives out loan security all the time necessarily means that this is not a good example. You can look at Cylinder as an excellent example here that just because government gave loan security to Cylinder did not mean that businesses were expecting nationalization of the solar industry. Necessarily means this is not applied.
That answers nuclear not being sustainable.
Additionally, we say that probably answers nuclear not being sustainable. If the government can give these some forms of loan security, necessarily means not only is that being big sorts of light water reactors are going to be increasing overall, means the status quo solves your case. But additionally, we say that this probably also even still we're still unique on the dissent when you're nationalizing entire industries. You can see our specific link analysis about how this is never expected by any businesses because the Supreme Court ruled in the 1930s that you can't, not 1930s, 40s, 50s, I don't know, ruled that the government can't nationalize entire industries. In Youngstown Shooting 2 Company v. Sawyer, necessarily means that you are a complete reversal of not only just impressive, but additionally of the Supreme Court, necessarily means that you are still looking into this. The next argument you make here is that advantage 2 means that energy becomes affordable. We say that first that all of your arguments about energy being affordable happen in the long term. Necessarily means that there's not a good warrant. Addition, second, we say that you are still going to be collapsing business confidence overall. Argument is that it's not just confidence within the nuclear industry, but it's confidence across the entire sector and across the entire economy. Necessarily means you are going to lead to a decrease overall. Means the use is still bad. You say that your next argument is a turn that we're going to be making. Energy production, sustainable. We say that we've already answered this by saying that you're still going to be freaking out the rest of the economy. This means it's still going to be worse impact. The next argument here is that we say that uncertainty is not You say that uncertainties exist now. We already answered this above. We say that first, even if that uncertainty is not existent, all of your arguments are temporary. Additionally, second, we say that the link is so huge here that even if there is a slight amount of uncertainty in the status quo, we say that is not enough to trigger the links to the entire economy that we talk about. You can see the entirety of our internal link and impact scenario. They talk about how when the economy when businesses start breaking out, not only is that an independently lead decrease in hiring, but it also leads to a harm of the economy overall because it fuels things like consumer confidence and decreases consumer spending because consumer prices increase. Necessarily means that your last argument here, no internal link, that there's no hiring now necessarily means we still solve this back. We already checked this argument way back up in the uniqueness level where it's like that jobs increase to 175,000 necessarily means that that hiring is happening and that we have a unique scenario here which we extend across the impacts of resource wars that we both get access to, but we get access to the resource wars scenario faster because of the fact that they are going to be harming the economy now. All of their nuclear arguments happen way down in the future. The last argument I want you to extend is that we get access to poverty impacts which they do not get any kind of access to. They don't get any access to poverty arguments. We're the only ones that access new hiring. Means the dis outweighs. Good? Advantage one. Two arguments I want here. First is the second turn that says that mining effect. First is the first turn that says that waste power plant that waste is going to be pushed to hurt places that hurt the poor. We have specific analysis here that learning that places like Moab where the nuclear waste is dumped. They make the argument the private companies are the ones that are doing this. We say that no, the government is the one that is in charge of things like nuclear waste disposal. And that means that you are probably only going to make it worse. Additionally, the second argument here is that light water reactors can't get rid of it all. We say no, you can't get rid of all of the nuclear waste. That's entirely impossible. It just becomes more pure. Necessarily means it's still going to be causing the worst impacts. Means you are still going to be causing worse harm to the poor.
Light water reactors work on the uranium fuel cycle, which can only extract 98% of the nuclear energy and limit
uranium fuel cycles
of radiation still there.
Uranium fuel cycles can only get rid of 98%. That means you're still going to causing these still harming, still going to be creating more nuclear waste overall. Especially when you're going making arguments how you're going to create more nuclear waste. Even if you get rid of some, you're still going to be creating more overall. The last argument I want here is that global warming is inevitable. We say that we've already reached the point of no return. That according to the IPCC means that even if you get a small time frame differential, we say it's still going to lead to the worst impacts because of the fact that global warming is just straight up inevitable. Advantage two on leadership. I want you to stand across the killer argument here that Jacob makes that the rest of the world is already moving to thorium reactors, which are a better, more advanced form of nuclear technology. All of their arguments about light water reactors won't function in a world where thorium reactors work on molten salt and do not have the same effects and risk of waste. It means that the entire world has already moved past this. It means that you don't get any access to your advantage two. It means that there's no link to this scenario and you straight up don't solve.
I would like advantage one, advantage two, and disadd. I'm not ready. This is going to be a pretty easy battle for Nevada today, at the point at which my opponents lose to the fact that all of their impacts are already happening in the status quo and they are losing inevitability claims. Means that they're never going to be getting access to unique offense against the disadvantage that they're definitely going to trigger. Means that the negative team is going to outweigh on the disadd today. Let's specifically do advantage one. The first argument that they're going to go for is that they are key to resolving air pollution, but to the point at which we are saying that water pollution is also bad and is also killing people and leading to pretty serious health detriments, that there's absolutely no reason why we're going to be buying their health impact scenarios, specifically when they are using the same technology that is already being used today to lead to harms for more individuals. The next argument that you can look to is the next argument they're going to go for is that light water reactors are going to use the waste over and over again until there's nothing there. But they're talking about liquid fluoride thorium reactors, which is molten salt reactors. It's an entirely different technology. They simply read the wrong technology. The light water reactor technology that they're talking about is on the uranium fuel cycle, which physically cannot be used to get down to no waste. It stays at 98% waste as a necessity of uranium. This simply cannot happen. It only happens through thorium, which doesn't work in the reactors that they're talking about. Means they never get access to this claim. They simply did their research wrong. The next argument that I need you to look to is the global warming inevitability claims that they fail to answer back. At the point at which global warming is inevitable, you're never going to be evaluating any of their impact scenarios coming off of global warming because it is already going to happen anyway, and there's absolutely no reason why they're going to be able to resolve this because it is irreversible. When they don't answer the irreversibility that the ICCC released, means that there's absolutely no reason to evaluate this advantage over the disadd. Happy, Corey? Yeah. Nuclear leadership. My opponents are going to come up here and try and say the light water reactors are such great technology and that the other countries are going to want this, but the United States has not built new nuclear reactors dramatically for the past like 30 years, and the other countries that they're describing have been building new reactor technology. Is the reason why these countries aren't ever going to want to use this. When I tell you that countries are...
Any argument extended about why the U.S. hasn't built new nuclear reactors doesn't get extended in the MO. That's not what Corey says.
Okay, whatever. I'm going for a different one anyway.
Okay.
The important word of this argument is that other countries have been building nuclear technology more recently, and that they are using better nuclear technology than light water reactors. They are on molten salt reactors, which is the next generation, but beyond the light water reactors. The reason why there's absolutely no U.S. modeling that is going to happen means that these other countries are never going to want to model off of the United States. The nuclear leadership is essentially meaningless in this debate. The next argument that I need you to look to is,
You're good.
Oh, you want me good here? Okay. The only scenarios that they go for are econ collapse, but that is almost certainly more directly caused by business confidence. Like, U.S. nuclear leadership is probably not very strongly tied to the economy. That's probably a very low probability scenario, where companies being afraid that the United States is going to come in and steal everything that they've been working so hard for is probably a more direct link and a greater probability to evaluate for. On the disadvantage, there's one very important argument that Corey makes that they actually read into the debate themselves, that is the reason why they're never going to be winning the debate today. They say that loan guarantees were just issued in Georgia for the creation of more nuclear technology, when their entire affirmative is based off of the fact that we need more nuclear technology in order to sustain ourselves in the future, and that is already happening right now. That is a reason why we never need to evaluate the affirmative over the disadvantage, because if the nuclear technology is sustainable right now and is going to provide for us into the future, then the affirmative team is never going to be winning the debate, because the only risk of the affirmative happening is the risk of the business confidence
We
dissent.
still get access to the perception arguments, though?
Right, well, we still get access to the perception arguments because this represents a pretty dramatic change for the United States never having nationalized an industry before in the last, whatever, 50 years it is that Corey reads. This is a pretty sure link to business confidence, at the point at which businesses are never going to want to operate in the United States when they are afraid that the United States is just going to steal their businesses. So you can extend across all of the impacts that are going to be weighted above the impacts of global warming and nuclear war, because they are already subsumed under other argumentation, or inevitable means that you need to evaluate poverty, because the only unique thing that can come out of the affirmative means that the negative team has won the debate today.
Okay. The order is going to be an overview. Advantage 1, health and the environment. Advantage 2, nuclear leadership. The disadvantage, business confidence. With an overview on top. And can I get a beer water? No.
Sorry, did you say you're going to the topic case or no?
Nah. I mean, no.
Sorry, I missed that one. What was it?
Yeah. Advantage 1, health and the environment.
Mm-hmm.
Advantage 2, nuclear leadership.
Yep.
Disadvantage, business confidence.
Oh, cool.
Cool. No offense on nuclear leadership with an internal link to controlling the economy means that we turn back and have a shorter time frame to controlling the economy than they do. In addition to conceded offense on business confidence means that we are controlling the internal link to nuclear leadership and the U.S. having an economic superiority and technological and development throughout the entire world. Advantage 1, health and the environment. The first argument I want you to do is I want you to look at the fact that, the first argument is that we're not going for this. The only answer that I need is a response from nuclear war in 4 areas. The first answer that I want is that this is because private companies have access, the ability to do this because there's no regulation over private companies in the status quo. The second argument is that the national is able to solve because of regulation. Additionally, the fact that light water reactors can reuse this waste is an indication of why, even if it becomes more pure, that's going to be able to solve that. But more importantly, the status quo is environmental racism. Articulation is that the coal-fired plants are going into these low-income areas, and these people are the ones who are affected first. Is an indication of why this is a triad for being able to solve back to this. If there's any chance that the government nationalizing this industry is able to check back for the environmental racism that's happening in the status quo, that's an indication of why you would never be voting on this turn. Advantage nuclear leadership. Okay. On advantage to nuclear leadership, the first argument that I want, they say that their nuclear leadership, the articulation is that right now the rest of the world is moving forward in nuclear reactors and the United States is not. We are not making this transition, means that we don't have any kind of competitive edge in the technology that is getting transitioned around. The articulation is that France is the one who is exporting most of their technology, which is Purex, which is uniquely bad for the environment, is uniquely bad for low-income groups, in addition to, particularly in Somalia, which is your own articulation. The United States take nuclear leadership, which is able to prevent proliferation and is able to step back for the United States economy and the global economy. That is the articulation out of advantage to nuclear leadership. The only argument that I need is the most important argument that I need is the only argument that they went for is the idea that the world's transitioning to thorium. This is an awesome claim, but I sure as hell wish I had a warrant, because it doesn't just mean something that you just say it. Our warrant is that France is uniquely pure and is exporting this technology to other countries. That is an actual argument as to why the international community is transitioning towards uranium and plutonium, not thorium. You needed an argument or a warrant as to why this is actually true, because we're giving you warrants. It means you always prefer our argument when you're controlling the uniqueness. They don't go for any offense on this articulation in any of the block. It means that any of these articulations of plutonium use in dirty bombs or fueling the renewable sector are tracked back by the arguments that Emily makes with regards to security, and the movement is happening with the status quo, and light water reactors are better, and the momentum towards renewables is going to be better in the future. It means there's no offense on this. It means that you don't go for impacts. It means that proliferation is going to be inevitable, leading to an inevitable nuclear war. You need a defense here if you wanted us not to have a 100% probable chance of leading to international proliferation, which inevitably leads to a global nuclear extinction to the point that someone gets access to one of these nuclear weapons that exist because the United States doesn't have the ability to strike back to this. Additionally, the second articulation that we're making is the proliferation as a result of France being able to export their pure X technology, which is uniquely bad for countries like Somalia and for the rest of the environment, is the articulation that we're making. There's international proliferation because the United States doesn't have its eye on the kind of technology that's getting internationally exported. Is the reason why nuclear leadership will also be bad. The second argument that I want is that we are always able to sell back to the economy. There's not a lick of defense as to why that's not uniquely important. The United States does not have a global access to this technology market. It doesn't have the comparative advantage anymore in technology and R&D, which is where the United States bases itself, because we're pushed out of this because we have regulations over being able to produce this nuclear reactors in education. Why we are able to sell back to that means that we are able to access time frame because this is a perceptual argument. If coal is unsustainable, which is the argument that we make out of the uniqueness, then we need to transition away from this. Businesses are uniquely freaked out because they don't have access. This means that even if you grant them the entirety of the business confidence, that business confidence is tanked by the economic collapse that happens from the peak coal, means that there is no research and development or technological advantage.
It's try or die for the app without a counterplan also.
It's try or die for the app without a counterplan. On disadvantaged business confidence. The first argument that I want is you're probably really confused about the uniqueness argument. I'm going to extend across the argument that Emily makes about political instability, that they just say that everything is temporary, but that's the unique problem is the fact that the United States government keeps making temporary actions, which is freaking out businesses. Are we going to invade Russia? Are we going to move to renewables? We don't know because the government is so unstable. That's the unique argument people will be buying because businesses are afraid to invest because we might be in a war tomorrow. That means you're always going to prefer this because that's the internal link to business confidence. That's the entire thesis of their business confidence argument. The next argument that I wanted, the defense, the conceded defense. The first argument is that the loan sector, the U.S. gave the loan security to Georgia looks like it's coming is an indication of why this would have already happened. The second argument is that Obama said he would make a transition to renewables. And the second defense argument. The third argument is that Japan is making that transition. They say that the fact that they already gave loan guarantees to Georgia means that it's already solved. That is not the articulation. It's not nationalization. That is not global United States nationalization doesn't check that. That means that we are controlling the defense. But more importantly, the offensive argument that I want you to extend across the fact that it makes it more affordable. Look, this increases the inputs to the industry. The articulation is if all of a sudden the United States nationalizes, they need the imports from the rest of the country in terms of the things that go into creating a nuclear power plant. It also creates cheaper energy for all of these businesses that are afraid about the peak coal. It means that we give them a cheaper energy use so that they can produce things cheaper and better. That is the internal link to the economy. You just can't concede a badass offensive turn like this. It means that we're able to interact with regards to time frame and poverty because we are engaging with you on this level to the point that there's a conceded turn that we're decreasing these inputs for these variables.
Correct me if I'm wrong, I never had that this is good for businesses because it's cheaper energy. I just didn't hear that out of the LOC. I might have missed it.
Yeah, so that's the first turn. It says it makes it more affordable. It's right before it's good for energy security. Underneath, commit to renewables is expected. It's in between, sandwiched between the two arguments.
It's in between what?
It's sandwiched between the 9th argument, commit to renewables is expected. It's the 10th argument, turn it makes it more affordable. The 11th argument is turn it good for energy security. It's
I say extend advantage to arguments makes affordable.
Okay, consideration for me.
You try and argue you're the only one who has access to this round because of poverty, but I promise you in a world where there's economic collapse because we don't have exporting research and development means that we don't have the kind of money for these impoverished people, and when there's a global environmental extinction as a result of nuclear weapons, these people are the ones who are affected first.
It was a split decision. I voted yeah. Okay, this was an incredibly close debate to me, and I really think F just barely pulls it out. There were a few different arguments here, just a little bit more ink from Neg, probably successful. So I think you guys kind of get a little bit lucky, and McKay does some good work, kind of making the right choices. So first, I evaluated the end one. The environmental racism term is very low magnitude compared to the rest of the debate. Relative to coal, it's hard to identify the impact of negative. I think got a very marginal environmental racism impact that you're not really going for. So I'm sure it won't be shocking that I don't vote there. Advantage 2. The question of the direction of nuclear reactor development in the rest of the world is really difficult for me to assess, and that's where I spend the bulk of my time trying to make my decision, is sort of sifting through the arguments that are out there. And here's what persuades me that there is at least a higher risk that the affirmatives argument is true. And here I think McKay does a really good job of pointing out that your Somalia turn seems to assume like at least a strong and vibrant French nuclear industry that is centered on Purex. And that's the closest thing that I have to a very good empirical warrant in either direction. So I think that you're winning substantial mitigation. And in fact, based on my own reading, which I don't remember very well, I'm inclined to agree with you on this question. I think that you're probably right, but I don't think that you're ahead on the debate. Yeah. Still, I think that that's pretty substantial mitigation to the affirmative's ability to solve this argument. The problem is that the pro-life impact is just totally unchecked. Everything beyond that point is just a free-for-all, right? So if they get over that hurdle, then they've got access to a pretty big impact. They also have an inroad to the economy, which actually ends up being pretty pivotal in my decision. Now, your LOR analysis, I think, is really spot on, Jacob, when you're pointing out that it's a much stronger internal link to the economy, especially absent any affirmative time frame analysis, which could definitely be featured in the PMR, right? If you've got arguments that say tech R&D is going to wreck our shit in like 3 years, you're in a much stronger position. You're right, but I would like to hear a little bit more from you on that and be like, look, best case scenario R&D is 20 years down the road when it starts affecting us, like when we can't keep graduating engineers and stuff like that. So I think you could push me farther in that direction than you do, Jacob. So I think that they're running a pretty significant risk of this pro-life impact, which is totally unfunded, and an inroad on the econ debate, although it's relatively small because of what I assume is going to be a delayed time frame. So I looked at the econ debate. McKay is going for like 3 different arguments, so that's all I have to put my energy into. The first is political instability, and this just isn't sufficient to trigger the impact that's being discussed out of the LOC shell, right? I think that the MO is correct in his argument that this is already factored into a lot of business decisions, that it may or may not be temporary. Plan seems to be a very significant break, so I'm not giving you much defense on that. The loan guarantees argument, I think, is actually very dangerous for you, and this is a place where you guys could have sealed the ballot with just a little bit more work. And I really had to pause on this for a long time. Loan security is clearly not big enough to trigger the JSAD. That's an argument they're winning, I think, pretty cold out of the block. But they also have this argument that that proves sufficient to solve the AF. The problem is that you guys just aren't quite detailed enough in your analysis. I think, Corey, if you point me back to the solvency page out of the 1AC and say, here are the inherent barriers, they say, to nuclear development, it's basically just startup capital and security risk, which loan guarantees would seem to completely resolve. If you connect those dots for me, I think it's really difficult for McKay to kind of squeeze out of this, out of the PMR. But that connection is not there. I'm wary of doing the work, and McKay gives me enough justifiable new analysis, given that this is an MO argument, I think, to kind of wriggle out of that for the most part. I think there's a risk status quo is capable of solving, but I think it's by no means guaranteed. Then there's this cheaper energy turn. This is the point of order, and Emily's right. I didn't have it labeled as a turn, but I have it as MG number 12. Maybe people disagree. But I have the words cross-supply advantage to cheaper energy. This is not by any means a straight turn. You desperately need a uniqueness argument that says energy sector killing the economy now, and this becomes like a Slayer argument, right? But absent that uniqueness argument, it's parallel at best. But it suggests an alternate causality for your impact, which severely impairs your uniqueness, in my opinion. That, coupled with the inroads from the pro-lift advantage, is sufficient defense on advantage 2 to make me say, well, here I've got this uncontested pro-lift impact goes to nuclear war in relatively near term, and that's where I pull the trigger. A couple just quick strategic comments. MG, I thought you were too long on topicality. Like you buried it, but I didn't think it was nearly as big a threat as you were treating it. MG, answers to business confidence. You've got some really good stuff in there, but I think you're too dependent on the blocks. I think if you cut out a few of those like stat arguments from the top and use that extra time like reading analysis that implicates the negative argument, you're in a much stronger position, and give McKay a lot more to work with. And you really need non-unique energy killing business confidence. PMR, I thought that you should have been going for Japan makes nuclear nationalization non-threatening. I actually thought this was a pretty good link defense argument that wasn't particularly well handled. Because if you can go for it, businesses don't freak out because they just saw Fukushima. They're not going to be thinking this is going to spread to coal, natural gas, etc. I think that's a really good defensive argument that could have been answered better. And I thought the PMR could have been much deeper on time frame comparison for DISAD versus case, and this goes the other way around as well. LOR could have done that. Better time frame analysis from either side probably could have swung my ballot. For negative, I really think that you either need a counterplan or a big status quo salt stomp. That should just be routine, because the arguments I'm pointing out tend to be like, you know, maybe you edge out the status quo salts argument. Much better to just have that as a dump on the top of the case or something similar. I'd like to see you also connect the DISAD impacts to the case impact, like econ collapse kills hegemony, which leads to pro-lift, that kind of thing. That way they can't get a totally uncontested scenario. PMR does a good job of like tying their advantage into the DISAD. You want to do the same. And finally, a really good, any empirical warrant for thorium now would lock you in, because it would pretty much take out advantage too. But it's kind of good. All right, I'll stop talking.
Yeah, for me, actually, strangely enough, I echo a lot of what he just said. There's just a couple of things that I went different on. For me, on advantage 2, the thorium, kind of like what he just said is, there wasn't enough articulation for me on that. It was just, you know, thorium is out there, but who's using it, how much, right? They have a much bigger scenario with that, and so for me, like, that gives them, I grant them advantage 2. More or less. Like I don't. If you want me to go through everything, I will. But everybody kind of wants to get out of here, right? So, bottom line, they're getting advantage 2 on that. So for me, it's basically like advantage 2 versus DA, right? And for me, it did come down to the time frame thing. And for me, the neg did have a little bit better time frame analysis on that. So I have like essentially long-term affirmative would solve better, right? The pro-lift, they get access to that, and I do have the affordable energy as a turn. I do have that on my flow, right? But all of those things function more as a long term, and I have more articulation from the neg that the perception is going to trigger first, right? So as soon as the USFG announces that they're going to nationalize this entire industry, for me, one of the key arguments was the Supreme Court thing. You're overturning the Supreme Court, all this precedent, right? And that's going to trigger the impact first. So essentially for me, echoing everything he said, but it did come down to the time frame, and so the DA essentially is winning on time frame with that. One thing I would have liked and would have made it easier for you, because it was a hard decision, is if you would have applied the Supreme Court thing more, right? If you're overturning this case that's been there for, what did you say?
50, 60 years, yeah.
Whatever, right? Like, that's a long time, and that opens the door for a lot of other nationalization, and that's going to be an even stronger link to business confidence freakout, right? Because now the major thing, structural thing preventing this from happening is now gone. And so from the AF, what I would have liked to have seen is a more direct refutation of that time frame. The Supreme Court are like, what are you going to do to pacify businesses now? Long term, sure, the prices and everything, that works out, but for me I didn't have a strong refutation of what you're going to do to stop that now, I guess, if that makes sense. So that's more or less what it is.
All right. Thank you.